Who gave that child permission to touch that piano? Martin Vale's voice cut across Whitmore Auditorium as he reached to slam the cracked lid shut. Noah Bennett caught it with one calloused hand, shielding 11-year-old Lily's fingers, while the brass plate beneath the lid flashed under the stage lights. "It's trash," Martin said. Lily looked at her father, pressed the middle key, and one clean note stopped every chair, whisper, and breath in the room. At the back, Evelyn Whitmore rose. The note lingered above the polished floor, warmer than anything that should have come from a piano with split lacquer, yellowed keys, and a white discard label still stuck to its side. Noah remained kneeling beside the exposed action, his walnut-handled tuning hammer resting against his palm. He did not smile. He did not look toward the donors in the front row. He watched Lily's shoulders loosen by half an inch, as though that single sound had returned something the room had taken from her. Martin's hand stayed suspended over the lid. "The instrument has not been approved," he said, recovering the calm voice he used in board meetings. "This is a safety matter." Lily swallowed. It didn't sound broken. The words were quiet, almost apologetic, but they carried farther than Martin's microphone. Evelyn stepped into the aisle, her eyes fixed not on the girl, but on the narrow strip of tarnished brass beneath Noah's hand. "Do not move that piano," she said. 3 days earlier, the auditorium had smelled of fresh lumber, floor wax, and the bitter coffee Noah had forgotten on the edge of the stage. He had spent 11 hours reinforcing the risers for Cedar Grove Middle School's winter concert, checking each brace twice because children would be standing above them. Lily sat in the third row with her music folder closed on her lap, tapping 8 silent measures against the cardboard cover while she waited for him to finish. "Almost done, kiddo," Noah said. "I know." She always said it that way, without complaint, as if waiting beside a toolbox was simply part of having a father who took every job he could get. Beyond the glass doors, sleet ticked against the loading dock. A security camera blinked red above the hallway, sweeping slowly past a gray tarp that covered something wide and heavy. Noah tightened the final bolt, tested the railing with both hands, then wiped sawdust from his faded denim shirt. On the folding table near the stage lay the invoice Grant Heller had promised to settle that afternoon. The amount at the bottom read $4,800. Beside it sat an unsealed envelope that felt too light when Noah picked it up. Empty. Through the office window, Grant spoke with Martin in voices softened by glass. Martin noticed Noah looking and offered a practiced smile before turning the blinds closed. Noah could have knocked. He could have demanded an answer while Lily watched. Instead, he folded the invoice carefully, placed it in his canvas tool bag, and crossed the hall to help a custodian lift a box of music stands that had split open across the floor. One stand had rolled beneath the gray tarp. Noah crouched to retrieve it, and his shoulder brushed the covered object. From underneath came a low bass vibration, faint but unmistakable, although no hand had touched a key. He pulled the tarp back only a few inches. A ruined baby grand waited beneath it, its lacquer cracked like dry river mud. The discard sticker on its side was new enough that the glue still shone. But beneath the sticker, pressed into years of dust, was the clean rectangular outline of a brass plate someone had tried to hide. Noah kept one hand on the tarp and stared at the clean rectangle in the dust. Someone had removed a plate, then covered the absence with a bright white discard label that still smelled faintly of fresh adhesive. Behind him, the office blinds snapped open. "Mr. Bennett." Grant Heller stood in the doorway with Martin Vale beside him, both men wearing the patient expressions of people about to explain something simple to someone they believed would not understand. "That area is restricted. I was retrieving a music stand. Then you have what you need." The fluorescent lights hummed above the loading hall, flattening every color into gray. Sleet tapped against the metal door while Noah slowly lowered the tarp, careful not to let its brass hooks scrape the cracked lacquer. Grant walked toward the folding table and placed 2 fingers on the empty envelope. "About your payment," he said. "There's been a small adjustment." Noah looked at the envelope, then at the invoice still folded inside his canvas bag. The amount was approved. "The project was approved," Grant corrected. "Final disbursement is a different matter." Martin stepped in before the silence could become uncomfortable. His navy tie was perfectly centered. His voice had the softness of a principal speaking to a worried parent. Cedar Grove values local contractors, Noah, especially men supporting families on their own. We understand flexibility is not always easy. Lily had risen from the third row and now stood near the auditorium doors, clutching her music folder against her coat. Martin noticed her and lowered his voice another degree, as though kindness could be measured by volume. We would never want a child exposed to adult financial stress. Noah's jaw tightened, but his hands remained still. Then speak to me plainly. Grant slid a carbon copy form across the table. At the top, beneath the school logo, someone had typed temporary property transfer. The line marked receiving party already carried Noah Bennett's name. The authorization box for the school's property manager was blank. The piano is yours, Grant said, as settlement. It is not listed on my invoice. Consider it an equivalent asset. Equivalent to $4,800? Grant gave a sympathetic little shrug. Potentially more, if you know what to do with it. Two custodians paused near the doorway, then quietly returned to stacking chairs. One of them glanced at Noah's worn boots and paint-stained canvas jacket before looking away. Martin rested his palm on the transfer form. You're a skilled tradesman. Salvage the hardware. Repurpose the wood. People pay good money for vintage decor. Noah read the form from top to bottom. The ink on Grant's signature was blue. The date beside it was that morning. Beneath the paper lay a faint crescent of dust, as if the document had been placed there only minutes before Noah arrived. This says temporary custody, Noah said. It does. Not say payment received. Grant's smile narrowed. It accomplishes the same thing. No, the word was quiet. It made Martin blink. Noah took out his phone, photographed the form, then placed it exactly where he had found it. You may transfer custody for storage. You may not mark the invoice paid. Grant leaned closer. You want to be careful here. Schools remember which contractors solve problems and which ones create them. Noah glanced toward Lily. She had heard enough to understand that something was wrong, but not enough to know how close the unpaid bill sat to the rent on their workshop. He crossed to her, zipped her coat to the collar, and tucked one loose page back into her folder. Wait by the front desk, sweetheart. Are we okay? We're going home together. She searched his face, then nodded. As she turned away, Vanessa Cross entered from the auditorium carrying a leather portfolio and the sharp scent of expensive perfume. Her eyes moved from Noah's work clothes to the tarp-covered piano. That is still here? She asked. Martin straightened. Only temporarily. It cannot be visible tonight. Founders Week photographs begin tomorrow. Grant laughed softly. No concern. Mr. Bennett is taking it off our hands. Vanessa gave Noah the quick, polished smile reserved for service workers whose names she did not intend to remember. That is generous of the school. It is supposed to replace my payment, Noah said. Her smile held for half a second too long. Well, some people would be grateful for an opportunity like that. From the hallway came the sound of Lily's music folder slipping to the floor. A single sheet slid beneath the glass door. Vanessa glanced down at it and read the handwritten title before Lily could retrieve it. Is she in the concert? Martin answered before Noah could. Not this year. We're protecting her from being placed in a situation beyond her preparation. Lily picked up the page, cheeks warming. I practiced. I'm sure you did, Martin said gently. But readiness is not just effort. Noah stepped between Lily and the adults without making the movement look like a challenge. He handed her the page and smoothed the bent corner. With his thumb. Go wait where it's warm. When she left, he turned back to Martin. Was she given an audition? The music department assessed all relevant factors. That wasn't my question. Martin's pleasant expression cooled, though his voice did not. This is not the time. Outside, a dumpster truck hissed to a stop beside the loading dock. Grant checked his watch. We need the piano moved before 4. Noah looked toward the tarp, then at the transfer form. He lifted his pen and drew one careful line beneath his name. Custody accepted for preservation only. Payment not received. Grant's fingers twitched. Martin covered the movement by adjusting his cuff. Noah signed, photographed the page again, and asked the custodians for 2 scrap boards. He slid them beneath the piano's wheels so the damaged frame would not twist while being moved. As he knelt, he noticed the discard label had been placed over an older inventory sticker. One corner had lifted in the cold. Beneath it, a faded barcode remained visible, along with a printed removal time. For 30 p.m. Martin had said he knew nothing about the transfer, yet the disposal order had been issued from his office 40 minutes before Grant called Noah to the school. Noah looked from the faded removal time to Martin's office window, where the blinds were now closed again. He said nothing. Accusations made without proof were easy to dismiss, and men like Martin Vale understood the protection of polished language better than most. Noah simply photographed the barcode, the 4:30 p.m. order, and the corner of the discard label lifting over the older inventory sticker. Then he slipped the phone into his canvas jacket and helped the custodians guide the piano toward the loading dock. "You're really taking it?" one of them asked. "For now. Looks beyond saving." "Maybe." The wheels complained against the concrete, each turn sending a dry wooden creak through the cracked frame. Cold air pushed under the loading door, carrying the smell of sleet, diesel exhaust, and wet cardboard. Noah kept one hand against the piano side, not because he thought it would fall, but because the left rear caster was pulling at an angle that could split the bass if they forced it. Grant stood beneath the heater with his hands in his coat pockets. "You know," he said, "most people would cut their losses, pull the brass, sell the legs, burn the rest." Noah crouched and slid another board beneath the damaged wheel. "Most people aren't moving it." Grant smiled as if that proved his point. "That thing will cost you more than it's worth." Noah tightened the strap around the body of the piano and checked that no metal buckle touched the lacquer. "Then it'll be my mistake." Martin watched from several feet away, his expression carefully neutral. "We appreciate your cooperation." "This isn't cooperation," Noah said. "It's preservation." For the first time, Martin's smile disappeared completely. Only for a second. Then it returned. Lily waited inside Noah's truck with the heater running low, her music folder tucked beneath her knees. When Noah climbed into the driver's seat, she looked past him at the baby Grand secured beneath a weatherproof tarp on the trailer. "Is that how they paid you?" she asked. Noah wiped rain from his forehead with his sleeve. "They tried." "Do we need the money?" Children had a way of stepping around every careful sentence and touching the truth directly. Noah glanced at the fuel gauge, then at the overdue electric notice folded near the cup holder. The red stamp showed through the paper even in the dim cab. "Yes," he said. Lily's fingers tightened around the folder. "Then why are we taking the piano?" Noah started the engine. "Because leaving it there wouldn't make them pay us." He pulled away from Cedar Grove slowly, careful over every pothole. In the side mirror, Martin remained beneath the loading light, watching the piano disappear. The school receded behind sleet-streaked glass, its windows glowing gold against the early winter dark. For 10 miles, Lily said nothing. She traced the bent corner of her sheet music, the one Noah had smoothed after Martin told her effort was not the same as readiness. At a stoplight, she asked, "Do you think it can still play?" Noah listened to the trailer settle behind them. "I think it still has something to say." Their workshop stood behind the small rental house, a converted 2-car garage with a patched roof, and a door that let in a thin line of wind near the floor. Noah backed the trailer inside, then spent 40 minutes lowering the piano onto blocks so the damaged caster carried no weight. Lily held the flashlight when he asked and stayed clear when he moved the heavier tools. She did not pretend to understand the braces, straps, or balance points. She simply followed his instructions and watched his hands. Under the shop lights, the piano looked worse than it had at school. The finish was split along the rim. Several keys leaned at uneven heights. Dust packed the felt so deeply that each press released the smell of old wood, mildew, and something faintly metallic. Noah removed his jacket and hung it beside Anna's old gardening coat, which still remained on the wall because neither he nor Lily had ever decided what to do with it. He opened the action carefully. "Can I help?" Lily asked. "You can number the bags." He handed her a black marker and a stack of small paper envelopes. She wrote slowly. "Screws, front rail. Springs, middle section. Felt pieces, do not throw away." Her letters were uneven but careful. Noah did not correct them. He loosened each component, photographed its position, and placed the original hardware into Lily's labeled envelopes. Near midnight, the electric heater clicked off. Noah crossed the room, tapped the thermostat, and watched the dark display remain blank. The overdue notice had become a shutoff. Lily looked toward him but did not ask. Noah brought an old space heater from beneath the workbench and plugged it into the house line with a heavy extension cord. He angled it toward Lily, not the piano. "You should go inside. I'm not cold. Your hands say different." She tucked them beneath her sleeves. Noah poured the last of the coffee from his thermos into a chipped mug, then added hot water and cocoa powder for her. He took none for himself. While Lily drank, he removed the key slip and found the cause of the jammed middle section. A narrow strip of fresh-cut pine wedged beneath the action rail. It was too pale, too clean, and too sharply sawn to belong inside a 68-year-old instrument. Someone had inserted it recently. Noah turned the strip beneath the light. One edge carried a streak of gray institutional paint identical to the loading dock wall. He placed it in a paper envelope, wrote where it had been found, and set it beside the photographs. "Did that break it?" Lily asked. "It made it look worse than it was." "Why would somebody do that?" Noah looked at the cracked keys, the new discard label, and the removal order from Martin's office. "I don't know yet." The following morning, a local antiques buyer named Cal Mercer stopped by after hearing Noah had taken an old piano from the school. Cal ran a thumb over one brass leg cap and named a cash figure large enough to keep the workshop lights on for another month. "You don't need the whole thing," Cal said. "The decorative parts are where the money is. They belong with the instrument. The instrument is dead." Noah glanced at Lily, who was practicing her 8 measures by tapping them silently on the workbench. "Not yet." Cal laughed once, tucked his checkbook away, and left. Noah watched the truck disappear, then opened the envelope containing the fresh-cut pine strip. Turning down quick money hurt more than he allowed his face to show. But he knew the difference between being desperate and becoming careless. By afternoon, he had cleaned enough of the action to see what others had missed. The hammers were worn but usable. The original screws had not been stripped. The soundboard carried no fatal split. The piano did not need to be dismantled for decoration. It needed time. Noah took $40 from the jar-marked utilities and bought only the felt, wire, and glue required for the first stage of stabilization. That evening, Lily sat beside him while he wrote a letter to Cedar Grove Middle School. He stated that accepting temporary custody did not settle the unpaid invoice. Then he added that, if the instrument could be restored safely, he would return it for student use without claiming ownership. Lily read the last sentence over his shoulder. "Even after what they did?" Noah folded the letter. "The students didn't do it." He dated the page, placed a copy with his repair notes, and sealed the original. No one applauded. No one offered help. The workshop remained cold. The electric bill remained unpaid. And Noah still had no idea whose name had once been hidden beneath the discard label. But when he began cleaning the black paint near the inner rim, a narrow line of brass appeared under his cloth. He stopped, adjusted the lamp, and saw the first engraved letter emerging from beneath the dark coating. A capital C, cut by hand decades ago. The kindness Noah had chosen without witnesses had preserved more than a broken piano. It had kept the first piece of the truth from being hauled away at 4:30. The engraved C did not prove ownership, value, or intent. Noah knew that before the cloth had even stopped moving in his hand. By noon, however, Martin Vale had already begun shaping the story around it. He called to say the school had received Noah's letter, then spoke with the patient caution of an administrator managing an unreasonable parent. "You've altered school property. I cleaned one section, without authorization." The transfer form gave me temporary custody for preservation. The workshop smelled of glue, cold metal, and the cocoa Lily had left half-finished near the vise. Winter light pushed through the dusty garage windows in narrow white bars, catching on the capital C beneath the black paint. Then Martin added the sentence that made Noah stop wiping his hands. "We need the decorative plate returned before you damage it further." Noah looked at the brass still fixed to the inner rim. He had never told Martin there was a plate. "What plate?" The line went quiet for half a breath. "Whatever you believe you found," Martin said. "Old instruments often have meaningless donor tags. They don't establish provenance." His answer was reasonable enough to survive on paper. A school could not treat every old inscription as a legal claim. But Martin had named the object before Noah had described it. Noah did not accuse him. He set his phone on the bench, turned on the speaker, and asked one simple question. "When did you last see the inside of this piano?" Lily looked up from the stool where she was sorting the numbered envelopes. Martin cleared his throat. "I don't inspect instruments personally." "Then how did you know the engraving was on a plate?" The space heater clicked off. Wind slipped under the garage door and moved the edge of Noah's repair letter across the bench. Martin did not answer directly. "Mr. Bennett, I suggest you bring the piano back before this becomes more complicated than it needs to be. It already came with a removal order from your office." "That was routine disposal." "At 4:30. "Yes." Noah's eyes shifted to the photograph on his phone. The barcode showed a printed removal time of 4:30 p.m., but the temporary transfer form Grant had handed him had been dated 3:50. Martin had just confirmed the disposal time without being shown the label. "I'll preserve everything as received," Noah said. "Nothing more." "That would be wise." The call ended. Lily waited until the screen went dark. He knew about the plate. He knew enough to ask for it. "Is that bad?" "It means we don't guess." Noah pulled on thin cotton gloves and photographed the brass from 6 angles before touching it again. He placed a ruler beside the engraving, recorded the time, and wrote down exactly what Martin had said while the wording was still fresh. Lily watched him label the page. "Mom used to write like that," she said. "Like what?" "Little lines under the important parts." The comment was simple, almost casual. Noah glanced toward Anna's gardening coat hanging beside the door, then back to the workbench. He had spent 4 years learning which memories could be held and which ones opened too quickly. He lowered the lamp and continued cleaning around the first letter. The black coating softened in narrow streaks. C became CL, then CLA. Beneath the grime, the lettering emerged one careful cut at a time. Clara Whitmore. A date followed. 1958. Below it sat a hand-stamped serial number, uneven enough that the final digit leaned slightly left. Noah did not breathe for several seconds. Cedar Grove's auditorium carried the Whitmore name, but that alone meant little. Schools often reused founder names across buildings, programs, and plaques. A brass plate could have been added decades after the instrument was made. The date could refer to a donation, a recital, or nothing more than a commemorative restoration. He photographed it anyway. When Lily opened the piano bench to look for a missing screw, the hinge gave a small dry squeal. Inside were 2 cracked pencils, a moth-eaten felt strip, and a folded concert program browned at the edges. "Dad!" She held it by the corner as if it might crumble. Noah took it gently and laid it beneath the lamp. The program was from a scholarship recital at Whitmore Auditorium. Most of the print had faded to gray, but one line remained dark enough to read. Anna Bennett. Beside her name, 8 measures had been marked in blue pencil. Lily leaned closer. "That's Mom. It's her name." "Same thing." Noah's thumb hovered above the blue markings without touching them. Anna used to mark music that way, 2 short strokes beneath a phrase and a tiny circle over any note she wanted to breathe through. He had seen the same marks on grocery lists, church programs, and the last calendar she kept beside the refrigerator. Still, a familiar handwriting style was not proof. "We check first," he said. "Before what?" "Before we decide what it means." The next morning, Noah brought copies of the photographs, the program, and his original preservation letter to Cedar Grove. Martin received him in the administrative conference room rather than his office. Grant sat beside him. Across the table was an elderly woman with silver hair, a blue treble-clef brooch, and an old leather folio resting beneath both hands. Martin introduced her only as Dr. Evelyn Whitmore, a retired music educator who occasionally reviewed archival materials for the foundation. Evelyn's eyes went first to Noah's jacket, still dusted with pale sawdust, then to the photographs. She did not smile. "You cleaned this yourself?" "Only the painted surface around the engraving." "With what?" Noah named the mild solvent, the cotton swabs, and the test patch he had used beneath the rim. Evelyn examined the close-up with a small magnifying glass. "And you expect us to believe this was hidden intentionally?" "I expect the surface to be examined." Grant leaned back. He accepted the piano as payment, then found a famous name. "You can understand why that looks convenient." Noah felt Lily's absence beside him more sharply than he expected. She was in class, carrying the same bent music folder, while three adults discussed whether her father was turning desperation into a claim. He kept his voice level. "I did not accept it as payment. The form says preservation only." Martin slid the transfer copy across the table, but his hand covered the handwritten sentence beneath Noah's signature. "The distinction is debatable." Noah placed his photograph beside it. "Not from this angle." Evelyn's gaze shifted to Martin's hand. He moved it away. The words "payment not received" became visible. For the first time, Evelyn paused. Not belief, not trust, only a disruption in the story she had been given. Martin recovered quickly. "Even so, a plate does not establish that this is the original Whitmore instrument. Old donor names were copied often." "Then the serial number should help," Noah said. Evelyn looked down. The final digit leaned left. Something changed in her face, so slightly that Grant missed it. "Where did you find the program?" she asked. "Inside the bench." Martin answered before Noah could. "Those benches collect anything. Students leave papers in them for decades." Evelyn turned toward him. "You said the piano had been in storage since before the current students were born." Martin's expression remained courteous. "I was speaking generally." "And the program?" "Likely unrelated." Noah placed the paper beneath the lamp. "Then why was it folded around the same 8 measures Lily has been practicing from the school archive?" Grant laughed once. "Coincidence?" Evelyn did not. She studied the blue pencil marks, then closed her folio without taking the program. "This is not enough," she said. "The plate could be commemorative. The paper could have been moved. The serial could have been copied." Her skepticism was fair, and Noah respected it more than false sympathy. What would be enough? A service record, an inventory ledger, a photograph that predates the transfer. Martin stood. "Unfortunately, those files no longer exist." Noah gathered the copies slowly. Through the conference room glass, Lily was walking back from music class with her folder against her chest. She stopped beneath a framed black and white photograph of Clara Whitmore at the auditorium dedication. Her head tilted. Then she lifted one finger and pointed through the glass. "Dad!" she called softly when the door opened. That scratch was already there. In the photograph, beside Clara Whitmore, stood a baby grand piano. On its left front leg was a crescent-shaped gouge identical to the one beneath Noah's new discard label. Evelyn turned toward the image. Martin stepped in front of it too quickly, and Noah realized the first clue was no longer just a name hidden under paint. It was a scar the school's own wall had been displaying for nearly 70 years. For several seconds, no one in the conference room spoke. The air conditioner clicked on above the ceiling tiles, and the faint rush of cold air suddenly sounded louder than the people who had been arguing a moment earlier. Lily stood beneath the black and white photograph with one finger still raised toward the crescent-shaped gouge on the piano's left front leg. Noah crossed the room, crouched beside her, and followed the line from the old photograph to the close-up image on his phone. Same curve, same position, same shallow split at the upper edge. "You noticed that from the hallway?" he asked. Lily nodded. It looks like a moon. Martin stepped closer, but he did not look at Lily. Photographs distort details, he said, especially old ones. Evelyn kept her gaze on the framed image. Then the instrument should be examined. By the appropriate personnel. Agreed. Privately. The fluorescent light reflected off Martin's polished cuff links as he folded his arms. Outside the conference room, a cart will squeaked down the corridor, then stopped. Noah rose slowly and slipped the phone back into his pocket. The action is stable enough for a limited test, he said. Grant gave a quiet laugh. You expect us to take your word for that? No, Noah looked at Evelyn. I expect you to bring someone who doesn't have to. The answer landed without heat and that made it harder to dismiss. Evelyn placed one hand on the leather folio. The music department has a technician scheduled next month. The concert is in 3 days, Martin said, which is exactly why we should avoid improvising now. Noah did not argue. Then let me demonstrate only what I repaired. No performance. No claims about ownership. Martin's eyes narrowed by the smallest amount. And if the instrument fails? Then you will have proof it is unsafe. And if it does not? Noah glanced toward Lily. Then she gets to hear one honest answer. The test was scheduled for that afternoon in the school's smaller rehearsal room, where the acoustics were flat and unforgiving. The baby grand had been rolled in on a padded dolly, its cracked body looking darker beneath the white rehearsal lights. The discard label still clung to its side, although one lifted corner now exposed part of the older inventory barcode beneath it. Noah had brought only the action, his tuning hammer, a felt strip, and a notebook filled with repair measurements. He had not polished the case. He had not hidden the scars. Martin stood near the door with Grant and the music teacher, Ms. Alvarez. Evelyn took a chair along the wall, her blue treble clef brooch catching a dull flash whenever she moved. Lily sat beside her father's toolbox, feet not quite reaching the floor. Brooke Cross was at an electric keyboard across the room, practicing scales under headphones, while Vanessa reviewed concert seating charts near the piano rack. We're all busy, Martin said. Let's keep this efficient. 10 seconds of quiet, Noah replied. That's all. For what? To hear what's wrong. Grant shook his head. The whole thing is wrong. Noah opened the action and pressed the middle key that had once jammed against the fresh-cut pine strip. The hammer rose sluggishly and struck with a dull double sound. Martin spread one hand toward the room. There. We have our answer. Not yet. Mr. Bennett. 10 seconds. Ms. Alvarez lowered the pencil she had been holding. Brooke slid one side of her headphones off. A chair leg scraped once across the linoleum and then became still. Noah closed his eyes. He pressed the key again, then the two beside it. 3 short notes. The first arrived late. The second carried a faint metallic buzz. The third died too quickly. Noah did not touch the tuning pins at first. He ran one finger along the action rail, then checked the spacing where the pine strip had been removed. The wood was forcing the center section upward, he said. That made the hammers strike at the wrong angle. Grant leaned against the wall. Convenient explanation. Noah lifted the fresh-cut strip from its labeled envelope but did not hand it around. This was inside the rail. New pine. Gray paint on the edge. Martin's expression remained composed. Maintenance debris can enter old instruments. Not beneath a screwed rail. Are you accusing school staff? Noah set the strip down. I'm describing where it was. Evelyn's fingers stopped on the clasp of her folio. Noah loosened one screw, reset the rail by a fraction, and tightened it again. Then he placed the tuning hammer on a single pin and turned it less than a quarter of a rotation. No flerisc. No speech. He pressed the same key. The note rose cleanly this time, steady and centered, without the dead second strike. Brooke took off her headphones completely. Vanessa stopped turning pages. The air conditioner filled the silence. Noah played a simple 3-note chord, not music, only a test. The sound held. Ms. Alvarez stepped closer. Again. Noah repeated it. The cord settled into the room and remained there longer than anyone expected. Martin's mouth opened, but no words came for a moment. Grant looked at the piano instead of Noah. Lily's shoulders lowered, and the tight crease between her eyebrows eased. She did not smile broadly. She only touched the edge of her music folder as though it had become possible to open it again. Martin recovered first. A few working notes do not establish that this instrument belongs in a student environment. They establish that it is not dead, Ms. Alvarez said. That is not the same as certified. Then certify it, Noah replied. He stepped away from the keyboard, leaving the evidence in the sound rather than in himself. Martin adjusted his tie. We should handle this through the proper channels. Quietly. There's no reason to create confusion before Founders Night. Evelyn looked at him. Confusion about what? An old instrument. Contractor dispute. A child disappointed about a concert assignment. People combine unrelated things. Noah saw Lily lower her eyes at the word disappointed, as though her exclusion were merely a feeling she had failed to manage. He closed the action carefully and said, Lily did not fail an audition. Martin's tone remained warm. Noah, this is not the place. She was never given one. Vanessa's portfolio stopped halfway closed. Brooke looked from her mother to Ms. Alvarez. Noah did not press further. He did not use the piano's clean note to demand a stage or embarrass the adults who had excluded his daughter. Instead, he turned to Ms. Alvarez. Would you test the action yourself? She did. The key repeated cleanly beneath her hand. Then the school's maintenance supervisor, Mr. Keene, entered carrying a thick binder with a cracked green spine. He had been asked to locate any record connected to the serial number. Dust marked the shoulders of his work shirt. Found one service log in basement storage, he said. Most of the old inventory books were transferred years ago. Martin moved toward him. I can review that. Evelyn's voice stopped him. Set it on the piano. Mr. Keene opened the binder beneath the rehearsal light. The pages smelled of cardboard, machine oil, and damp concrete. He turned past entries for upright pianos, bandroom lockers, and auditorium equipment until he reached the hand-stamped serial number from Noah's photograph. The final digit leaned left exactly as it did on the brass plate. Beside it, in faded black ink, someone had written, Whitmore Trust Instrument. Never remove without foundation approval. A whisper started near the doorway and died almost immediately. Evelyn lowered her hand onto the page, not touching the ink. Martin smiled, but the expression had lost its ease. That record is almost 30 years old, he said. Policies change. Trust ownership does not change because a page gets old, Evelyn replied. Unless the foundation released it. Grant shifted. His weight. Maybe they did. Mr. Keene turned the page. It had been torn out close to the binding. Only a narrow strip remained, with a faint carbon impression and the top half of a recent date. Martin spoke too quickly. That page was already missing when the storage files were moved. Evelyn looked at him. I did not ask when it went missing. Martin's hand tightened once against the back of a chair. Noah leaned closer to the torn edge, careful not to touch it. Under the rehearsal light, the carbon trace showed part of a sentence. Transfer approved before, then the line vanished where the page had been removed. Evelyn closed the binder halfway, took out her phone, and sent a message without explanation. When she looked at Noah again, her expression was not trust, but something more serious. The decision to verify him. No one removes this piano, she said. No one deletes hallway footage. And no one touches the original ledger until I return. Martin's polite mask held, though a pulse had begun to move near his temple. On the torn strip, just beneath the incomplete sentence, Noah saw the beginning of an office code that matched the disposal order printed at 4:30. The piano had not merely been forgotten. Someone inside Cedar Grove had tried to move it through the system before anyone with authority could stop them. The office code beneath the torn carbon line matched the disposal order exactly. Noah did not say it aloud until Evelyn had photographed both pages under the same light. One image showed the service log entry identifying the piano as a Whitmore Trust instrument. The other showed the 430 removal order issued from Martin Vale's office. Between them sat the missing page, torn close enough to the binding that only the words transfer approved before remained. Before what? Ms. Alvarez asked. Before authorization, Noah said. Martin folded his arms. That is an assumption. Then the original records should correct it. There are no original records. You said that before Mr. Keene found this one. The rehearsal room went still. Brooks' electric keyboard had timed out, leaving only the low ventilation fan and the faint ticking of cooling metal. Inside the piano, Martin's expression remained professional, but he reached for his phone and turned it face down. Evelyn noticed. She said nothing. Her attention shifted instead to the folder Noah had placed beside the service log. The unsigned transfer form, the photograph of the discard label over the older barcode, and the copy of his invoice for $4,800. Who approved the invoice? She asked. Grant answered first. My company submitted the project billing. That was not my question. The school paid the general contract. Martin stepped toward the door. We are drifting into confidential financial matters. These should be reviewed privately. Evelyn closed her leather folio with one hand. They became relevant when school property was used to settle a private debt. Grant's face changed at the word debt. Not fear. Calculation. He looked toward Noah as if deciding which version of the story would cost him less. Noah and I had a misunderstanding about timing. You told me the money was unavailable, Noah said. The budget shifted. The invoice number did not. Grant rubbed his thumb along the edge of his wedding band. Contractors know payments move between categories. Workers know when they have not been paid. Noah's voice carried no anger, which made Grant's irritation show more clearly. Martin stepped between them with a conciliatory smile. No one is disputing that Mr. Bennett performed labor. We are discussing the appropriate administrative remedy. You called the piano an equivalent asset, Noah said. A practical accommodation. For a debt you now say was only delayed? Martin's eyes moved briefly toward the hallway camera beyond the glass. The red light was still blinking. Evelyn followed his glance. Mr. Keene, she said. Preserve every recording from the loading dock, hallway, and administrative corridor from Monday through today. Martin exhaled through his nose. That seems excessive. Then it should be easy to confirm there is nothing relevant. He did not answer. By late afternoon, the school's accounting office had pulled the payment file. Evelyn requested that Noah remain only long enough to identify his invoice number, then asked him to wait outside so student information and unrelated payroll details would stay private. It was the first boundary anyone had set that did not feel designed to remove him from the truth. Noah sat on a wooden bench beneath the framed photograph of Clara Whitmore. Lily sat beside him, swinging one boot just above the tile. She had been released from class and was eating crackers from a vending machine packet. Are they in trouble? She asked. They're checking the records. Is that the same? Not yet. She considered this, then offered him the last cracker. Noah broke it in half and gave the larger piece back. Through the frosted glass, the accounting printer began feeding pages. The machine clicked steadily for nearly a minute, then stopped so suddenly that both of them looked up. Inside, an employee had placed a single sheet in the center of the table. Even through the glass, Noah recognized the project number. Evelyn opened the door. Mr. Bennett. The accounting clerk, Mrs. Dorsey, kept both hands flat against the table as if the paper might move. The school's payment register showed Grant Heller Construction had received the full contract amount 6 days earlier. Below it was a line item for carpentry reinforcement and labor. Vendor allocation, $4,800. Noah's name appeared in the description. The school paid him, Mrs. Dorsey said. Grant's chair scraped backward. The payment covered multiple obligations. This line is specific, Evelyn replied. It identifies Mr. Bennett's work. My company manages subcontractor disbursement. Then where is the disbursement record? Grant opened his mouth, closed it, and reached for his phone. Martin spoke instead. This is a contractor dispute. Cedar Grove cannot mediate every disagreement between vendors. Noah looked at the pay date, then at the transfer form. The school paid Grant before Grant called him to collect the piano. The empty envelope had never represented a delayed budget. It had been theater. He knew the money was there, Noah said. Martin's voice sharpened by a degree. Be careful with accusations. I am reading the date. Mrs. Dorsey pulled a second page from the file. There is also an asset offset note attached to the payment record. The note used the same office code printed on the disposal order. Its description read, use retired piano against Bennett balance. Remove before Founders Night. Martin wiped one palm against the side of his trousers, then noticed Evelyn watching and placed both hands on the chair back. That wording could have been entered by anyone with access. Who has access? Evelyn asked. Several administrators. Name them. Martin's jaw tightened. This is becoming adversarial. The record already is. The accounting clerk retrieved the access log. 2 usernames had opened the note. Grant Heller's contractor portal and Vail admin. The entry did not prove who typed every word, but it proved Martin had reviewed the instruction before the piano was moved. He had not been merely helping communicate. He had been inside the process. Grant leaned forward. Martin told me the instrument had no active value. He said the foundation records were obsolete. I said no such thing. You said nobody checks basement ledgers. The words left Grant too fast. Martin turned toward him, and for 1 second the polished partnership between them vanished. Evelyn watched the break without interrupting it. Then she asked for their phones to be preserved pending council review. Martin laughed softly, but the sound held no humor. You do not have authority to seize personal devices. I did not say seize. I said preserve. She opened her folio and removed a card embossed with the seal of the Whitmore Education Foundation. The clerk's posture changed first, then Ms. Alvarez's. Martin stared at the seal. Evelyn still did not announce her title, but she no longer needed to. No deletions, she said. No altered files. No private cleanup before the board meets. Noah looked at the card, then at the blue treble clef brooch on her coat. He understood that she was more than a retired music teacher, but he did not ask how much more. The evidence mattered more than the name attached to it. Evelyn turned to him. There is one final ledger at the Foundation archive. If the serial number appears there, the transfer was never the school's to make. And if it does not, then we correct what we can prove and stop where the proof ends. It was the answer Noah had hoped for. Not rescue, discipline. That evening, Evelyn came to his workshop alone. Snowmelt darkened the shoulders of her wool coat, and the garage light cast her shadow across the piano's cracked rim. She asked to see every part Noah had removed. He showed her Lily's labeled envelopes, the preserved screws, the fresh-cut pine strip, the brass plate still attached, and the dated letter offering to return the restored instrument for student use. You wrote this before identifying Clara's name, she said. The date is on the copy. And before knowing who I was. I still don't know who you are. A small expression touched her face, not quite a smile. That may be the first honest thing anyone has said to me today. She examined the tuning hammer with the walnut handle, and the engraved initials A.B. Noah took it from the bench before she could ask. It belonged to my wife. Evelyn did not press. Instead, she turned toward the piano bench. Inside lay the old recital program with Anna Bennett's name. May I? Noah nodded. At the Foundation archive an hour later, the serial number appeared in a handwritten ledger beside Clara Whitmore's signature, and the same instruction engraved on the brass plate. No child should need money to be heard. Below it was a maintenance history spanning 4 decades. The final entry listed a scholarship recital recording stored under Anna Bennett. The archivist brought out a small cassette box with a faded label. When the tape began, static filled the room, followed by the scrape of a bench and a young woman's quiet breath. Then Anna played the same 8 measures Lily had been tapping against her folder. Noah reached forward and stopped the recording before the melody continued. The room fell silent. Evelyn did not ask him to play it again. "This could change the entire concert," she said. "Not like that," Noah replied. "Her voice is not evidence against them. It proves the program's connection. Then use the program. Use the ledger. Use the dates. Don't use my wife to make people pity my daughter." Evelyn studied him for a long moment. Whatever doubt remained in her did not disappear because Noah was poor, grieving, or gifted. It disappeared because, with the strongest emotional weapon in his hands, he refused to use it carelessly. The archivist turned another page. Attached to the founder covenant was a condition no one in the room had yet discussed. If access to music was restricted by a student's ability to pay or by donor influence, the foundation could suspend every discretionary grant connected to the auditorium. The injustice was no longer one unpaid contractor, one excluded child, or one endangered piano. It threatened every student who depended on the program. Evelyn closed the ledger and said the next words with the weight of someone who had finally decided to stop observing. "This cannot stay behind a closed door. Tomorrow night, the board hears it before the first note of the concert." By 6:30 the next evening, Whitmore Auditorium no longer looked like a schoolroom. Warm stage lights spilled across the polished floor. Evergreen garlands framed the balcony rails. Donor names glowed on brass placards, and the low murmur of parents filled the air beneath the soft tuning of strings backstage. At center stage, the restored baby grand waited under a single amber lamp. Its lacquer still carried scars. The white discard label remained fixed to its side, exactly where Grant had placed it, and beneath one lifted corner the older inventory barcode showed like a truth refusing to stay covered. Noah entered through the rear doors with Lily beside him. His canvas jacket had been brushed clean, but a pale line of sawdust remained in one seam near the cuff. He looked tired. The unpaid rent, the cold workshop, and 3 nights of careful restoration had settled beneath his eyes. Lily held his hand with one hand and her bent music folder with the other. "We can still go home," she whispered. "We could. Are we?" No, they moved down the aisle as people noticed them one row at a time. A few parents recognized the contractor whose dispute had become rumor. Others saw only a working man walking toward a piano that had suddenly become the center of a foundation review. Vanessa. Cross sat in the front row beside Brooke, her posture rigid beneath a cream-colored coat. Martin Vale stood at the podium with a prepared statement arranged in perfect alignment. Grant Heller waited near the side curtain, rubbing his thumb across his wedding band. Dr. Evelyn Whitmore sat among the foundation trustees, not on stage, her blue treble clef brooch barely visible against dark wool. She had chosen a place from which she could see every face. Martin tapped the microphone. The room quieted. "Before our founder's winter concert begins," he said, "I want to address recent confusion regarding an obsolete school instrument and a private contractor disagreement." His voice was steady, sympathetic, practiced. "Cedar Grove values transparency. We also value fairness, especially when misunderstandings affect children." Noah felt Lily's fingers tighten around his. Martin continued. "A retired piano was transferred in good faith to settle an outstanding obligation. After the transfer, questions arose regarding its historical markings. We have since learned that the instrument may have archival interest. At no point did the administration knowingly violate foundation policy." The first explanation landed softly. Several parents nodded. It sounded responsible. It sounded unfortunate. It made the entire matter seem like a paperwork error enlarged by a disappointed father. Martin turned slightly toward Noah. "Mr. Bennett performed restorative work without formal authorization. While we appreciate his enthusiasm, preservation must follow certified procedure." Grant lowered his eyes with the modest expression of a man accepting shared blame. Martin's tone became gentler. "And because Mr. Bennett's daughter was not selected for tonight's featured program, emotions understandably became involved." A whisper moved through the auditorium. Lily looked down at her folder. Noah bent just enough to speak without anyone else hearing. "You don't carry their version of you." She nodded once. Martin invited Noah to come forward, not as an equal, but as someone being given a courteous chance to respond. Noah walked to the stage without haste. He did not approach the microphone. Immediately, first he crossed to the piano and placed one hand on the lid, the same quiet gesture he would make later when Martin tried to close it. The discard label faced the audience. "This is what I was given," Noah said. His voice needed no anger to carry. Not as a donation, not as a restoration contract, as payment for $4,800 of completed labor. Martin lifted one hand. "That characterization is disputed." Noah removed the empty envelope from his document folder and placed it on the piano. Then he laid beside it the unsigned transfer form. Under the stage light, the blank authorization box was visible even from the first rows. "The envelope was empty," Noah said. "The form says temporary custody. It does not say paid." Grant stepped toward the microphone. "The arrangement was verbal. Then why was my name typed before I arrived?" Noah asked. Grant paused. "Administrative preparation." "And why was the property manager's approval blank?" "An oversight." For a moment, the answer seemed enough. A trustee leaned back. Someone in the third row whispered that paperwork mistakes happened every day. Martin saw the room returning to him. "Exactly," he said. "An incomplete form was handled poorly. That does not establish misconduct." Noah did not argue. He placed the next photograph beneath the document camera. The screen above the stage showed the discard sticker over the older barcode and the removal order stamped 4:30 p.m. "This was printed from Mr. Vale's office," he said. Martin nodded calmly. "Routine disposal scheduling. Before the transfer was presented to me. The piano was already designated surplus. Before foundation approval?" Martin's jaw shifted slightly. "We had no reason to believe approval was required." Evelyn remained still among the trustees. She did not rescue Noah. She watched Martin as he spoke. Noah replaced the image with the accounting register. The project line appeared on the large screen. Carpentry reinforcement and labor for $1,800. Paid to Grant Heller Construction 6 days before Noah received the empty envelope. The whispering stopped. Grant stepped forward quickly. "That payment covered my company's contract. Subcontractor timing is an internal matter." Martin seized the explanation. "Precisely. The school paid its vendor. Whatever Mr. Heller owed afterward was not under administrative control. It was the strongest defense yet, and for a few seconds it worked." Martin looked almost relieved. The board counsel leaned toward another trustee. Vanessa Cross exhaled and folded her hands, as though the ugly misunderstanding had finally been reduced to one contractor failing another. Noah looked at the audience, then at Grant. "You told me the school had not released the funds." Grant's voice hardened. "I told you cash flow was delayed. You said the budget shifted. That is the same thing." "No," Noah said. "It isn't." He placed the asset offset note beneath the camera. "Use retired piano against Bennett balance. Remove before founder's night." The office code matched Martin's disposal order. Grant's contractor login and Vale admin were listed in the access record below it. A chair stopped scraping near the aisle. The ventilation system hummed above the silence. Martin adjusted the papers on the podium. "Access does not prove authorship." "No," Noah said. "It proves review. I review hundreds of administrative entries. You told me you knew nothing about the transfer." Martin's eyes moved toward the trustees. "I said I did not personally inspect the piano. That wasn't the question." The room slowed. Martin had used the distinction before, but under the stage lights it sounded thinner. Evelyn placed one hand on her closed folio. Still she waited. Martin leaned toward the microphone. "We are allowing unrelated details to create a false narrative." The instrument was believed to be obsolete. Mr. Bennett was owed money by Mr. Heller. A practical solution was attempted. No child was harmed, and no educational access was denied. Lily's grip tightened again. Brooke looked at her from the front row, then at her mother. Noah could have named Lily's exclusion immediately. He could have used the room's sympathy while Martin was exposed. Instead, He turned toward Ms. Alvarez, who stood near the stage stairs. Was Lily given a scheduled audition? Ms. Alvarez took a breath. Her name appeared on the preliminary list. Martin spoke before she could continue. Preliminary lists are not guarantees. Was she given a time? Noah asked. Ms. Alvarez looked down at the folder in her hands. Yes. A ripple moved through the room. Martin's face remained composed. The schedule changed. Brooke rose slowly from her seat. Vanessa reached for her sleeve, but Brooke shook her head. She was 12, nervous, and pale beneath the lights. She did not make a speech. She simply held up a folded sheet. I kept the first audition schedule, she said. Lily's name was on it. Vanessa closed her eyes. Brooke walked to the stage and handed the paper to Ms. Alvarez, then returned to her seat without looking at Martin. The original schedule appeared on the screen. Lily Bennett, 3:20 p.m. beside her name. Someone had drawn a line through the entry in blue ink. The replacement schedule showed Brooke moved into the same time slot. Martin's voice softened. Programming decisions often require adjustments. Brooke was better prepared for the featured arrangement. Brooke looked up. I never auditioned for Lily's slot. The room went quiet again. Vanessa turned toward her daughter. Brooke, you said Mr. Vale had already decided. Martin's fingers tightened around the podium edge. Children often misunderstand adult conversations. Noah stepped away from the microphone before the moment could become a public punishment for Brooke. She told the truth, he said. That is enough. He looked at Martin. This is not about humiliating anyone. It is about not burying the truth a second time. Evelyn's gaze shifted to him. The sentence seemed to settle something in her. Martin straightened. Then let us be accurate. There is no proof that donor influence determined any placement. There is no proof that the piano transfer and the audition schedule are connected. And there is certainly no proof that this administration violated a binding covenant. Evelyn finally opened her folio. The sound of the clasp carried farther than it should have. She removed the foundation ledger, the founder covenant, and a sealed archival envelope. Martin saw the seal and lost color. Around his mouth. Dr. Whitmore, he said quickly. Perhaps we should review archival interpretations in executive session. You asked for accuracy, Evelyn replied. You will have it. She did not yet stand. Instead, she turned to the technician at the control booth. Preserve the camera feed from the administrative corridor and loading dock. The projection screen went black. A file directory appeared. One clip was missing 7 minutes. Martin looked toward the booth before anyone announced the gap. Noah noticed. So did Evelyn. That footage was corrupted, Martin said. The technician had not spoken. Evelyn's hand became still on the sealed envelope. How did you know which footage I meant? Martin opened his mouth. Nothing came. Then the rear auditorium doors swung inward, and Mr. Keene entered carrying a portable drive and an unopened records box marked Whitmore Foundation Archive. Every face turned toward him as Evelyn rose from her seat, one hand resting over the blue treble-clef brooch, ready at last to say who she was and open the evidence Martin had spent the evening insisting did not exist. Mr. Keene placed the portable drive beside the sealed archive box, and the sound of plastic touching would carried through Whitmore Auditorium like a gavel. Evelyn stepped into the aisle. My full name is Dr. Evelyn Clara Whitmore, she said. I am Chair Emerita of the Whitmore Education Foundation, and Clara Whitmore was my mother. No one moved. The amber stage lights caught the blue treble-clef brooch at her collar, and for the first time Martin Vale looked at it as more than jewelry. Evelyn walked to the stage without hurry, carrying the founder ledger beneath one arm. This piano was not surplus property, she said. It was never owned by Cedar Grove Middle School. It was placed here in trust. She opened the ledger beneath the document camera. Clara Whitmore's signature filled the screen, followed by the instrument's serial number, the left-leaning final digit, and the covenant written in dark fountain pen ink. No child should need money to be heard. The room released one low breath and held the next. Martin gripped the podium. Historic language does not automatically create a present obligation. Evelyn looked at him. The obligation was renewed in 1989, 2004, and again when this auditorium accepted foundation renovation funds 6 years ago. She turned 3 pages. Each renewal carried the school district seal. Each included the same restriction. The instrument could not be sold, discarded, transferred, or withheld from student use without written foundation approval. There is no approval, she said, because none was requested. Grant shifted toward the curtain. Board counsel rose near the front row. Mr. Heller, remain available. Grant stopped. Evelyn nodded to Mr. Keene. The auditorium screen changed from the ledger to the recovered loading dock video. The missing 7 minutes were no longer missing. Mr. Keene explained that the hallway server had lost the indexed copy, but the camera itself retained a local backup. The timestamp appeared in the corner. 3:42 p.m. Grant entered the loading area carrying the fresh-cut pine strip. Martin followed 30 seconds later. There was no sound, only gray security footage beneath harsh fluorescent light. Grant lifted the piano's action. Martin held the lid. Grant slid the strip beneath the rail and pressed down until the center keys rose unevenly. A parent in the balcony whispered, "Oh my God," then covered her mouth. The next frame showed Martin smoothing the white discard label over the older inventory barcode. At 3:49, he photographed the damaged keys with his phone. At 3:50, the transfer form was printed. At 4:30, the disposal order was scheduled. The timeline moved across the screen in silence, each minute stripping away another explanation. Martin's hand loosened from the podium. His pen rolled across the wood, struck the floor, and spun beneath the stage light. "That footage lacks context," he said, but his voice had gone dry. "The strip may have been placed to stabilize the action." Noah stood beside the piano. "It forced the hammers out of alignment." "That is your interpretation. It is my trade." Martin glanced toward the audience, searching for the professional tone that had protected him all evening. "We were assessing whether the instrument was safe to move." Evelyn turned to Ms. Alvarez. "Would forcing the action upward make the piano appear more damaged?" Ms. Alvarez looked at the screen, then at the restored middle keys. "Yes. Would it be necessary for safe transport?" No, Grant's face had turned pale. Martin said the instrument needed to look unusable or the foundation would ask questions. Martin spun toward him. "Do not invent conversations because you are frightened. You told me the plate had to stay covered." The words escaped Grant before he could stop them. The auditorium became so quiet that the projector fan sounded like wind through a vent. Evelyn rested one palm on the founder ledger. "You said earlier you had never inspected the piano." Martin stared at Grant. "I was repeating what maintenance reported." Mr. Keene shook his head. "Maintenance never reported a plate." Martin's eyes dropped toward the camera at the rear of the auditorium. This time, everyone saw him look. Evelyn asked for the text record. Board counsel inserted the portable drive. A series of recovered messages appeared on the screen, pulled from the contractor portal and the school-issued administrative backup. Grant, "Bennett keeps asking about the 4800. Martin, give him the piano." Grant, "He may recognize the hardware." Martin, "Cover the plate and move it before Founders Night." Grant, "What about the trust log?" Martin, "Basement records disappear all the time." A sound came from the front row, not a gasp but Vanessa Cross drawing in air too sharply. Brooke reached for her hand. Martin stepped away from the podium. "Those messages are incomplete." Evelyn did not raise her voice. "Then complete them." He said nothing. "Were they altered?" "I would need technical review." "Did you send them?" Martin looked at the floor. The silence answered before he did. Evelyn turned to the board. "The evidence establishes deliberate damage to a trust instrument, concealment of its identity, unauthorized attempted transfer, misuse of school asset procedures, interference in contractor payment, and suppression of records." She lifted the first audition schedule. "It also establishes that Lily Bennett's assigned time was removed without a recorded evaluation." Vanessa stood slowly. "I need to say something." Martin closed his eyes for 1 second. Vanessa faced the audience. though her voice shook. I asked whether Brooke could be given a more visible place in the concert. I was told the program could be adjusted if our family increased its donation. Brooke looked down, but Vanessa placed one hand on her shoulder. I should have asked whose place she was taking. I did not. Martin raised a hand. Donor conversations are routinely misunderstood. Brooke spoke from beside her mother, barely above a whisper. You told us Lily was not ready. The words were small, but they reached the stage. Noah looked at Lily. She stood close enough that her sleeve touched his hand. He did not look at Martin when he spoke. She deserved a fair hearing. Nothing more. Nothing less. Evelyn nodded once. She will have one. Martin moved toward the piano. This performance cannot proceed on an uncertified instrument. He reached for the lid. Noah caught it before it closed. The exact image promised from the beginning came alive beneath the amber light. The tired single father kneeling beside the scarred baby grand. Lily at the middle key. Martin's hand frozen above the lid. The discard tag still visible. And Evelyn standing with the founder ledger open beneath Clara Whitmore's name. Who gave that child permission to touch that piano? Martin demanded, the old authority returning for one final second. Evelyn answered, I did. Lily looked up at Noah. Just one? She whispered. He listened to the room, to the breath in her chest, to the restored action beneath the keys. Then he nodded. Lily pressed the middle key. One note rose from the piano, clear and unbroken. It traveled beneath the balcony, across the donor plaques, through the rows where people had whispered about her father's coat and her family's money. The sound did not beg. It did not accuse. It simply held its place until the entire auditorium surrendered to it. Martin could not speak. Grant stared at the floor. Vanessa closed her eyes. Brooke exhaled and smiled through tears she quickly wiped away. Evelyn's hand trembled once over the ledger before becoming still. Noah kept one hand on the lid and the other near Lily's shoulder. He did not celebrate. He only breathed with her until the note faded. Then board counsel stepped to the microphone. Grant Heller was suspended from all district contracts pending investigation. Martin Vale was removed immediately from arts program oversight and placed on administrative leave. A forensic audit would begin the next morning. The unpaid $4,800 was ordered into escrow, with restoration expenses to be assessed separately. Lily's exclusion was voided, and every student audition affected by donor intervention would be reviewed. The system had finally begun to move, not because anyone shouted louder, but because the evidence had become heavier than the lie. Evelyn closed the founder ledger and faced Noah. The foundation will cover the piano's full restoration, she said, and we would like to discuss your future with the program. Noah looked at the instrument, then at Lily, then toward the old recital program holding Anna's name inside his folder. Recognition had arrived. Authority had shifted. A door neither of them had asked for now stood open. But after years of being unseen, unpaid, and spoken over, the question was no longer whether Noah Bennett had power. The question was what a man of quiet dignity would choose to do with it.